Because I want to go home and take more.
Yeah, if it gets too
I'll try to get it on and show them to you guys. Show it.
Oh, really?
I think this year or last year, that's a change. This year or last year. They never made them.
No way. I never knew that.
Yeah, they're just not built with them.
Wow.
They are now.
Yeah.
They're never.
Wow. Yours is automatic, right? Yeah, one guy comes in, he's got.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to begin shortly. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent. Council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. And mark that out, because I'll stare at that. Insane. All right, today is May 1st, 2023. It is Monday. It is a Committee of the Whole meeting for Barberton City Council, but before we begin the Committee of the Whole meeting, we do have individual committee meetings this evening. So we will start with Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting. Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call to order the Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting Committee. It is 6:03. We're up in council chambers. All the members of this committee are present. I as chair, Mrs. Bailey, and Mr. Griffin. Council members present and other guests as noted on my sheet. We have a piece of legislation, two pieces of requested legislation. A letter from Todd Shreve, our service director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Perrin Asphalt and Concrete Perrin for the asphalt paving portion of the 2023 street resurfacing program. This will include Edgewood Park and Tuscarora Park pickleball courts. This was in the Parks Committee meeting last week, and it was brought out for on the floor. And so then now it's going to the Streets Department. That's why we have Parks and Street. We had two bids that were received for the repaving. We had one from Barbiscus, which was $1,304,797. The second bid was through Perrin Asphalt, and that was $1,063,139.50. So you can see where Perrin was the best and the lowest, and I believe the last couple of years Perrin had been awarded that. So do I have any questions from my committee regarding this? No? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey first.
Yeah,
Second, Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Second, I have a piece of legislation. It's a letter from Michael Tiadecki, city engineer, requesting legislation to amend ordinance number 43-2023. Additional repairs are needed in the amount of $3,750. Emergency wording is requested. The reason for this change, a change order, it's an amendment to that, because we had passed ordinance 43 for Kunkel and Son properties to do the East Houston and 8th Street. That was $64,962.26. The city then requested one more outlet and 47 additional foot of pipe to be added to the system. And that will take it from the northeast corner of East Houston to 8th Street. And that cost us $3,750. So before we go any further, the whole total of this project with Kunkel and Son will be $68,712.26. The work, if this is passed through our committee and council, the work can begin immediately and will be completed in 2 to 3 weeks. So first, my committee, we have to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302, the 10-day rule. Do I have any concerns or questions from my committee?
No.
Do I have a motion to invoke the Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, second.
That's that.
Mr. Griffin, all in favor?
Aye.
Do I have any questions from council, the body? No. Do I have any questions or concerns from guests in the audience? No. Hey, do I have a motion to call for this ordinance?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. I had them backwards here, so excuse me. Mr. Griffin first, second, Mrs. Bailey, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We have no pending legislation and miscellaneous. I did want to, I know the next question is going to be, do we have a list of the streets that are going to be resurfaced in 2023? And we do not as of this writing. So as soon as that is concrete and it's a for sure thing, council will know. Okay. Does anybody have any miscellaneous? Mr. Greer? President Greer?
Thank you, Chair. How are we authorizing entering the contract if we don't know what roads are being done?
It goes by how many miles or something? How's that
It's
work?
on quantity.
On
So-
quantity.
So the quantity of pavement will not change. There are some discussions in target areas to pave.
Okay. Awesome, thank you, Chair.
That is why sometimes we'll have some asphalt left over and they're able to do a smaller street or extend it or something of that sort.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Griffin, and we are adjourned at 6:09. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angeloff. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call to order the Environmental Health and Social Services Committee. It is May 1st, 6:09 PM. We're in council chambers. Myself as chair, Mr. Jaber and Mrs. Angeloff are on the committee as well, and all other council members are as noted, and all others that are present are as noted on my sheet. We have one requested legislation piece, which is a letter from Mayor William Judge requesting legislation supporting an application to the Tuscarora Health and Wellness Foundation for a grant for the RIP medical debt. Emergency wording as requested. So this has been a discussion. The RIP medical debt, we discussed the foundation, so this is the start of that process. Would you like to speak to that at all?
Yeah, so I spoke with the foundation. The application's actually not due until July 15th. The foundation's schedule is June 1st, but since this is kind of a subset with Tuscarora's Health and Wellness, that's due July 15th. So I've been discussing this with them. How much should we ask for? What's their limits? What kind of documentation do they need? So if this is approved by council, we'll continue those discussions with the foundation and move forward with the application.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
I will second that.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there is no pending legislation. I'll open this up for miscellaneous discussion. Any from council, body? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I will second that.
We are adjourned at 6:11 PM, and with that I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee to order. It is Monday, May 1st, 2023, 6:11 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Jaber, and President Greer. All other council members are also present, and guests are noted on my sheet. Planning has no new requests for legislation. We do have pending legislation, which is ordinance number 64-2023. PTJWE Consulting LLC, Topcraft, the CRA abatement, an ordinance authorizing the mayor via the planning director to submit to the state a business application for tax incentives on behalf of PTJWE Consulting LLC, also known as Topcraft, for a 100% 15-year tax abatement for the business expansion and improvements to 175 2nd Street Southwest. And this has emergency wording. This was approved by the school board unanimously last week. They also created an additional agreement in which the school board will receive 25% of what they would have otherwise received annually throughout the abatement. They also agreed to join the Business Advisory Board and provide internship and apprenticeship opportunities for our career tech students. So I thought that was really nice that they added that in there. Are there any questions regarding this piece of legislation? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous discussion. Anything from the committee, other council members, the gallery? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make the motion.
I will second that.
Thank you. Okay, we're adjourned at 6:13.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Next up, Finance and Personnel with Mr. Heddick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel, it is 6:13, Monday, May 1st, 2023, in council chambers. The committee is present, which consists of Councilors Coburn, Thompson, President Greer, myself as chair, all others noted. Tonight we have some requests. The first from Fire Chief Stephen Iona requesting legislation to amend 26-2022 P-Fund Superior Ambulance sales from the approved amount of $216,555 to $224,161. Emergency wording is requested. Did everybody get the letter of explanation?
Yes.
Are there any questions from the committee? From the body? From the gallery? Being none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Next, from our strategic planning, Stacy Carr requesting legislation to pay an invoice to Kent State for services in creating the Lake Anna study in the amount of $9,400 dated prior to the purchase order with emergency wording requested. Does everybody have the entirety of that? Were there any questions on that? From the gallery? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a letter from Law Director Lisa Kolish-Miller to authorize an ordinance appropriating $7,000 from the unappropriated item of the Law Enforcement Trust Fund to the operation and maintenance budget of Law Department Law Enforcement Trust Fund to purchase laptops for prosecutors. Everybody see that? Do I have any questions from the committee? From the body? From the gallery? Director?
Did you have any questions about what that means or what that was for, or how that came about, or anything? I wasn't sure.
Seems to me like your prosecutors need laptops.
Right, I just didn't know if you knew about the law enforcement trust fund or anything like that.
I have no questions. Does anybody?
No.
I just have one.
Counselor?
How many laptops? Three?
Three. The current way of handling computers now is to have laptops rather than desktops. And that way they can take them into court with them because we are paperless in our office now. So instead of carrying files into court, they take the laptops into court.
Anything else?
Councilman?
One more question.
Mr. President?
Just a follow-up question, Chair, for Mrs. Miller. How's that working out for you, the paperless?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, it's just, it's crazy good.
So-
We're able to, so when a victim calls our office, you know, we're able to access that information very quickly. We can either do it by attorney name, we can So Mrs. Angeloff can tell you how awful it was. You know, if you're a victim on a case, we were never able to keep records by the victim's name, right? It's always by the defendant's name. And so if you're a victim of a crime, sometimes you don't know the name of the person who assaulted you or the driver who hit you. And now we're able to, if you're the victim of a crime, we have the victim's name in Matrix. And so we're able to search by victim's name and get that information up really fast, assuming, you know, the computer isn't down for some reason. And give them whatever they need quickly. So when the next court appearance is, or if the person's pled, or what the restitution needs are in that case. And it's just absolutely crazy, awesome. And it's just unbelievable. We love it. We can't imagine how we used to do our jobs before. I mean, it does help that our caseload's doubled, so, you know, but it's so fast and easy. But when the system goes down, we actually are paralyzed. But that doesn't happen often at all. And then the clerk's office, of course, they serve as, you know, they do have files down there, but I mean, we are not able to really function very well. But I mean, it's only happened maybe 3 times in the last 8 years, so.
Yeah, so it sounds like the investment was worth it.
Oh, it's fantastic. We're so
Great.
grateful.
Awesome. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
I'll make a motion to call for that.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Pending, we have ordinance 64, 2023, PTJWE Consulting LLC Topcraft CRA abatement. Did anybody think of any questions in the last 5 minutes from the Plan Committee's meeting? Right. Miscellaneous discussion. Is there any from the committee?
I have none.
From the body? From the gallery? I have one since this is finance. Mr. Mayor, is Copley now leaving Swascom? And if so, what does that do to the fees?
So by the agreement, they have to give a 60-day notice, anyone that wants to exit. They voted at Copley Township a couple weeks ago to give that 60-day notice to leave in March of 2024. So the thought is that they're going to go with the county's system, but they've not received a contract from the county. So they don't know exactly what is in the agreement. So they can always rescind that. We have looked at the cost formula and what that will do to increasing the cost for Barberton and Norton. At the next meeting, we're going to have someone from Swisscom, or excuse me, from the county come in and explain a little more and answer some questions. We've gone up and looked at the county system. We've got a state-of-the-art system here. It's been working and functioning very, very well. So kind of wait and see at this point.
Because my next question would be that fiber ring, will that change, possibly eliminate Swascom from us completely and go with the county with that kind of information ring?
No, 2 separate issues. The fiber ring shouldn't be affected by anything through Swisscom. But back on Swisscom, the facility over there in Norton, it's its own self-contained building within a building. So it sits kind of underneath the fire station. And so if the fire station were to crumble, this is its own HVAC system and everything. So at some point, most likely in the future, there's going to be just a couple dispatch centers, you know, throughout the state. You know, every county is going to have at least 1 or 2. But this is a state-of-the-art facility. So, you know, there may be an opportunity to kind of work that into this. But the county's working through their system and still got a ways to go. So we can continue to keep our hand on the pulse there.
Thank you. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:21.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. That concludes our individual committee meetings. We will take a very short break since that went by really fast. I just got to go see if there's any more forms outside and give you guys time to adjust real fast for the committee of the whole. That was your 2 second.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Now this weekend's
No.
Yeah, don't lose that.
No,
You guys have some of the most fanciest staplers I've seen.
we do. Hey, I know about staples. Literally don't even squeeze it.
All right, good evening. Today is Monday, May 1st, 2023. This is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:24 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens addressing council, we do have one here. Mr. Schuff, please step up to the microphone over here, state your name, address, and the reason you're speaking. You have 5 minutes to address council.
Hi, my name is Mike Schuff. I live at 566 East Castle Avenue here in Barberton. The reason I'm here tonight is Matt and our director Matt and I wanted to come and invite the city council to our ribbon cutting ceremony on May 24th. So I have some invitations here if you want to take them and pass them around. We really appreciate your guys' support and the welcome that you've given to us. So we look forward to seeing you there. There'll be a tour of the school, some great food, but also feel free to pass the word. The entire city is invited to come check out our new school and see everything that we have to offer. So thank you for having us, and we look forward to seeing you on the 24th. There's instructions to RSVP on there as well too, in a couple different ways. So just feel free to give us a call if you have any questions. All right.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Schuff. And is that for you? All right, we'll jump right into committee reports, and we will start with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Streets, sidewalks, and lighting met this evening at 6:03. All members of the committee were present, all council was present, and guests as noted. We had a couple different pieces of legislation. First one is a letter from Todd Shreve, our service director, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Perrin Asphalt and Concrete for the asphalt paving portion of the 2023 street resurfacing program, and the tennis courts at Edward Park and the pickleball courts at Tuscarora Park. There were 2 bids received, and Perrin was the lowest and best bid. This first, the parks had it in their committee last week and brought it out of the committee, and we approved it tonight. So we'll have it for legislation next week. Second letter is from our city engineer, Michael Tiadecki, requesting legislation to amend ordinance 43/2023. Additional repairs were needed after they looked at what we passed. And this is on West, East, Houston, and A Street. They have decided that they need one more inlet and another 47 foot of additional pipe to be added to the system. And that will get started as soon as council's passed, as soon as we pass it. We had no pending legislation. Mr. Heidig on miscellaneous asked, because we don't have a list yet of the 2023 paving, and he asked how that is based on its quantity of pavement. And we then adjourned at 6:09, and with that I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening at 6:11 here in council chambers. All members were present, as well as all council members and guests noted on my agenda sheet. We had no new requests for legislation. We do have one pending legislation, which is ordinance 64-2023, title PTJWE Consulting LLC, Topcraft, CRA abatement, an ordinance authorizing the mayor via the planning director to submit to the state of Ohio a business application for tax incentives on behalf of PTJWE Consulting LLC or Topcraft for a 100% 15-year tax abatement for the business expansion and improvements to 175 2nd Street Southwest, and declaring an emergency. This had to go before the school board and was passed unanimously last week. They also created an agreement with the school board that the school board will receive 25% of what they would have otherwise received annually throughout the abatement. And Topcraft also agreed to join the Business Advisory Board and provide internship and apprenticeship opportunities for our career tech students. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:13. With that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. City Utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met on April 24th. All members were present. We voted on all three legislations that we had last week. We have nothing else to report, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Public Welfare and Safety, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last Monday, April 24th, 2023, in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We had one new request for legislation, which was a letter from Chief Stephen Iono, Barberton Fire Department, requesting council to sponsor legislation to allow the Barberton Fire Department to submit a grant request not to exceed $900,000 to the Barberton Community Foundation for the purchase of a fire engine to replace an outdated 2000 E1 pumper that is currently the oldest engine in the fleet. We had discussed this last week and discussed how that affects our rating. Also, the fire chief has spoken with the Barberton Community Foundation about this grant, and we'll see what happens. We had three other pieces of legislation on the agenda last week that we voted on, and they all passed. One was for a contract with Oriana House. Another was a contract with the Legal Defender's Office of Summit County to provide legal representation to indigent persons. And the last one was an ordinance to enter into contract with SNC Construction Company, LLC, for the contract to make the improvements at Fire Station Number 1. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on April 24th. We met in council chambers, all members present, and all others noted. We have no requests for new legislation, no miscellaneous discussion from council members or anyone in attendance. But we do have pending legislation, ordinance number 58-2023, titled CDBG Annual Action Plan Amendment, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Barberton to approve the amended fiscal year 2022 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan, AAP, and declaring an emergency. We adjourn at 6:22, and with that I pass.
Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met tonight in council chambers. All members were present, all other council members were present, and then all others were as noted on my sheet. There was one new piece of requested legislation, a letter from Mayor William Judge requesting legislation supporting an application to the Tuscarora Health and Wellness Foundation for a grant for the RIP medical debt. Emergency wording was requested. We did pass that out of committee. There was no pending legislation, no miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:11 p.m. With that, I pass.
City Properties, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties Park Recreation met April 24th, council chambers. All members are present, all guests were also noted, and other council members. We had one requested legislation, like Ms. Angeloff said earlier, is with the streets. A letter from Todd Shreve, Service Director, requesting legislation to enter contract with Parent Asphalt and Concrete for asphalt paving portion of 2023 street resurfacing program in Edgewood Park and Tuscarora Park pickleball courts. We had 2 bids on that, and motion on that, and we voted. And we had no miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:05, sir. That pass.
Finance and Personnel, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Personnel is calling for the following. Legislation to amend 26-2022 P-Fund Superior Ambulance sales from the approved amount of $216,555 to $224,161 with emergency wording. Legislation to pay an invoice to Kent State for services in creating Lake Anna study in the amount of $9,400 dated prior to the purchase order. Emergency wording. And an ordinance appropriating $7,000 from the unappropriated item of the Law Enforcement Trust Fund to the Operation Maintenance Budget of the Law Department in the Law Enforcement Trust Fund to purchase laptops for prosecutors with emergency wording. And with that, finance passes.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. That concludes the individual committee reports. Is there any remarks from council members? I do have, I forgot to mention this before, we do have a special legislative, so let's stick around after this is over. The next council meeting will be on May 8th, and that's all I have. So Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We realized the other week there was a vehicle on in the news and on social media involved in a paintball incident or shooting. So that vehicle described in that incident is still being investigated by the Barberton Police Department. So if there's any questions, please talk to the police department about that. Magic Marketplace update. This project is going to be kicking off very soon. Unfortunately, we purchased some signs, put them up last Friday, and unfortunately they were stolen over the weekend. So we are taking before, during, and after pictures of the renovation. I was talking to the gentleman from Towpath School. I hope that they had taken before and during and after pictures of their school, because I think those types of pictures really help. So in this case with the Magic Marketplace, we are taking those pictures, and that'll be moving forward here very, very soon. So it's always nice to see a project transform from start to finish, because sometimes there's short memories on what it used to look like and how bad it was. So Change for Change is this Friday, supposed to be last Friday. Out of respect to Coach Sharkey and his calling hours, we switched the date, so that'll be at El Jalapenos for a school literacy program this Friday from 4:30 to 7. Last week we welcomed a new business to town, RSS McLean. They're involved in the canning industry. They do canning, packaging, developing standard operating procedures, tools and pieces and parts with the equipment. Not a lot of fanfare. They had a class going on, so they kind of wanted to make it a little very quickly done. So we went in, gave them a certificate, met with them, and that was it. So they didn't want a big what to do, but great family-owned company we've been working with for the last few months, and hopefully they want to do something a little bigger down the road. But occupying a vacant building and new businesses to town here, so it's all good. May have seen this afternoon, nice article in the Beacon Journal online, should be out tomorrow, about the city's dam project and the grant funds that we've been able to secure for this project. The key takeaways for this project is that, one, it's moving forward, and this $9 million, $9.5 million that we were able to secure grant funding for really lessens the burden of the cost on the taxpayers. You see what's happened in other communities when it comes to utilities and sewer and things like that. Glad that we were able to secure that funding so we don't have to pass that on to the residents. So always working to bring in the revenue and grant funds and reducing that burden on the residents. Also, deadline for nominations to be considered for the Walk of Fame for this year is June 9th. So please contact my office if you have an application or need an application, and get that submitted. A lot of talk, a lot of phone calls we've fielded. As you know, the cost for electric will be going up here in June. The city is under an aggregation program. Provides a fixed price of 4.97 cents through May 2024. So I believe that's on our social media pages and on our website for people to opt in. Some great news moving forward here with all the projects we have this summer. The water line and resurfacing on West Houston from Worcester Road North to the dead end has been completed. Going to go through some punch list items, but that road was tore up for a long time. We replaced the water line last year, which is going to help the residents there. It's going to help the businesses there, and one business in particular is going to add on some square footage and add more employees because of this new water line. And then we resurfaced the road. So it looks amazing. And it really looks, I didn't get a chance to go down there when it was raining, but it really looks like the inlets, the way the road was paved, that the inlets are really going to capture the bulk of the water. Because whenever you resurface a road, you want to make sure that that's a consideration of the depth that they set the paver. So it looks really good. So if you haven't been down there lately, please go down there and drive down that road. Also, it's my understanding that there's a post or a video on social media concerning the Street Capital Fund. That's Fund 201. I got some questions about it, that the post or video said that this money goes into the general fund and gets eaten up by other departments. So this is totally false and inaccurate information. I hope everyone knows, especially council, that this money goes into a separate fund, 201. And the council votes on the budget each year. And this money can only be used for road resurfacing or reconstruction. Can't go for wages or hiring people. It can't go for vehicles or anything like that. This language was approved by City Council at the time, approved by the Board of Elections to go in front of the voters, approved by the voters, and so now it's law, and that's how the intention to use it. That's how we've always used it. So we, the city spend about $1.5 to $2 million a year out of that fund. And if council recalls, you approved the budget for this fund in December, separate from the rest of the budget, so we could move the process forward a little earlier. So just wanted to clarify this fund and ask if there's any questions that I can answer concerning that fund. No? All right. Other than that, I have nothing else.
Mayor, I do have a question. What was that canning business? What was the name of the company?
RSS, I'll spell the last name for you, MACLIN.
Thank you.
Over here on Worcester Road West and, what was that, 6th Street? The old Bookbinders building, the brown building there. So they do standard operating procedures, and they refurbish canning equipment. They bring people in from distributors to show them how to run the canning equipment. So whether this is beer or pop cans, it's soup cans, things like that. So they've got a nice little niche there that I was kind of unaware when we first met with them that even existed. But they do good business, and are very excited to be here in Barberton. So, yes.
I wanted to piggyback on your announcement about the energy with the aggregation. And remember, I was in Medina's aggregation. Well, I was able to straighten that out. So now I'm in Barberton's. So if anybody has a similar problem, they can give a call and have them, research your address. I don't know how I ended up in that to begin with, but now I'm back in Barberton's.
You're close.
I beg your pardon?
You're close.
So, Councilwoman, how easy or difficult was it to switch over to the correct?
It wasn't difficult at all, but they said it was like pending, and I got my paperwork. But I reached out to Amy, our rep, because she had sent out an email last week about the increased costs. And I told her what had happened, that I was in Medina, and she called Energy Harbor. Nobody could explain how that happened. But she said, give them another call, tell them your address and everything, and that you should be in Barberton aggregation, and they switched me over. So they just sent this to me the other day. So I'm back in.
All right, very good.
Yes.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, this meeting is adjourned at 6:43 PM. We're going to go directly into the special legislative meeting, if that's fine with council.
No. 636 3749. Because people, might not even realize it until it raises because Ohio legislature is going to.
We can take a short break. We'll take it.
So, anyway.
Oh, you almost Ron Burgundy me again. I want to cop that one. You can. We'll come back.
Are we good now?
Thank you. All right, we're going to begin.
I'm trying to think of who that was that took us. My God, I can't think of his name
Today is
now.
Monday, May 1st, 2023. This is a special legislative meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:46 PM. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn. Here. Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mrs. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
President Greer.
Present. All right, since this is a special, we'll start off with second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 64-2023, presented by Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Heidick. Title, PTJWE Consulting LLC, Topcraft, CRA abatement. An ordinance authorizing the mayor via the planning director to submit to the state of Ohio a business application for tax incentives on behalf of PTJWE Consulting LLC, Topcraft, for a 100% 15-year tax abatement for the business expansion improvements to 175 2nd Street Southwest and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And I have Mrs. Angeloff, but Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Councilor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 64-2023.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 64-2023. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion for adoption carries. With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you. I will second Mr. Heidick's motion.
Thank you. It was moved by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. All right, this meeting is adjourned at 6:49 PM. Thank you.
I was going to tell you that I'm going to let you out. You needed to, with the